gosh, there's cat hair all over me. Maui's coming to hang out for this one. What is up, everyone? My name will be Josh. This is Strain Central, and today I am going to be doing a podcast on Rehab. I got a cat in my lap too, so this will be an interesting podcast. But I kind of disappeared off the planet, or the face of the planet, should I say, for the past about 2 months' time. And realistically, in the last probably 8 months or so, I really have not consistently uploaded content other than like little spurts and sprees here and there. So I thought I'd kind of address where I've been, what's been going on, and I guess this is almost like a part 2 to that alcoholic video I made a couple months back. Oh my gosh, I have so much cat hair on me now. Maui, you are in like full shed season. But, oh, cat butt. I also can't get that on camera. That's a quick demonetization there. But looping back around to what I was saying, I just got out of a 28-day inpatient rehab stay in Kirkland, Washington. And I never thought that was a sentence that would ever be coming out of my mouth. I never thought I could say that I was going to be going to rehab, nor could I say that I think rehab changed my life incredibly positively for the good of things, for the better. I made a lot of what I think are probably going to be really long, like borderline lifelong friends in rehab. Maui, bud, get down. I got a cat all over me right now. If you're not watching the video version of this, I'm getting all kinds of Maui snuggles. But yes, I spent 28 days in an inpatient facility up in Kirkland for my alcohol issues. I've made several videos talking about how I am an alcoholic. It's a predisposed genetic thing for me. Both my grandparents on both sides are alcoholics. Both my parents were or are recovering alcoholics. And then also it just runs all throughout my family tree. Uncles, aunts, cousins, sisters. There's a lot of people in my life that are affected by, heavy alcohol consumption. For me, it escalated extremely quickly. So I really started drinking heavily probably about 2 years ago, mostly when YouTube deleted my channel, just because I didn't really have that outlet. It was the equivalent of like your employer walking up to you, or you walking into work one day and having a letter on your desk from your employer that says you're fired with no stated reason given. So it really fucked me up and put me in a really bad mental place. And I started drinking because it made me feel better. And unfortunately, within about a year, I was physically dependent on alcohol to the point that if I wasn't drinking, I was going into withdrawals. And withdrawals from alcohol are not like withdrawals from cannabis. If you're withdrawing because you're stopping smoking weed from cannabis, you might have some agitation. You might be a little bit anxious. You might be kind of depressed. There are some, things that follow that. Alcohol, on the other hand, can literally kill you when you stop withdrawing. So the way that alcohol processes in your body, it's very easy to become physically dependent on. And once you're physically dependent, you stop drinking, you start shaking, you start sweating, you have uncontrollable anxiety, and you can also start having seizures, which are something that I've experienced. So I've probably been trying for about 6 months to actually recover, and the first 3 attempts were all white-knuckling it on my own, thinking I could do it uneducated with my own willpower because I'm a fucking hard worker. And that's just not how it works at all. If you're not working a program, if you're not working at your recovery, it's really fucking hard to recover. You have to really 1,000% be devoted and ready to actually get better to start working on getting better. And I think that's one of the main things that changed this time, is actually going into a rehab facility, actually going into a specific place for this issue. I got a lot more closure to my disease, to alcoholism. I was able to separate myself from, the drinking, from the smoking, from everything that I was consuming for about a month and kind of redevelop my views on substance use. So right now, I'm not drinking, I'm not smoking weed. I am still taking antidepressants, but that's the only thing that I'm currently on. And it's funny, when you stop taking a depressant every day, i.e. alcohol, you're a lot less depressed. So my antidepressants have been a lot more effective, and I've talked about mental illness a lot on this channel. I've talked about the fact that I was diagnosed as bipolar 2, and the really interesting thing is, once I've taken substance use out of that equation, I'm not having bipolar symptoms. I'm not having any manic episodes. I really haven't had any depressive episodes, and my depression has been so minor. So what recovery for me entails was obviously an inpatient program. Went to a rehab center and stayed there for 28 days. And then getting out, I've been pretty much just head over heels trying to get involved and get fully into AA. AA, as well as I am also doing outpatient treatment just to, have some accountability, just to get UA'd and continue to learn about this disease, because this is not something that you kick and all of a sudden you're just done with. You're like, I'm done drinking, peace. No, this is something that I'm going to have to work at continually to actually achieve and maintain long-term sobriety. When it comes to cannabis use, I will be smoking again. I'm not just going to stop smoking weed forever. Realistically, I'll probably take 6-8 months to kind of stabilize myself. I'll still be doing reviews and stuff on CBD and products just because this is still my job. I still love cannabis. I still love this industry. But for now, I'm basically entirely sober off all substances. As you can tell by my room and my camera, because I'm not using my DSLR, I'm actually at my parents' right now. I'll probably be spending 3 to 6 months here just yet again for that extra layer of accountability. And having someone to be there to make sure that I'm not drinking, I'm not relapsing, I'm not falling back into those struggles. But one of the main reasons I did this is not only for myself. Obviously, I was miserable. I was depressed. I was in a really fucking awful place. And it almost kind of felt hopeless at a lot of times. Oh, Maui's back here to get some more cuddles. But I was just in a really dark place. And when I walked through the doors at the inpatient facility, I didn't really expect to get help. Like I said, I tried this on my own a few times, and it just fell on its fucking face. It fell face first into the dirt, and I continued to keep failing and relapsing. I would get 30 days under my belt and relapse, 60 days under my belt and relapse. And it was just because I thought, like a lot of other alcoholics, that, I didn't have an issue. I think I was in a state of denial. I thought that maybe it was just situational. Maybe it was just, life was hitting me hard, and that's the reason that I was drinking excessively. Or that I could eventually return to be a normal drinker, which is like the qualm of every true alcoholic, is your brain wants to tell you that you can drink like everyone else. Because societally, alcohol is so normalized. You drink everywhere. Especially in my age range, like mid-20s, you're constantly in social situations where you're drinking. You're constantly in social situations where alcohol's involved. So it's hard to not be around. You walk into any store and there's aisles and aisles and aisles worth of alcohol. There's the wine aisle, the actual hard liquor aisle, the beer aisle, and then every end cap has some kind of alcohol on it too. So it's just so normalized in society that it seemed like an impossible task for me to accomplish. Just cutting alcohol out forever. And I think that was what I was holding on to, and why I kept failing and over and over again, is just because I thought that I would be able to stop for a little bit, control my drinking, and then go back to controlled drinking. A true alcoholic, there is no state of controlled drinking. We drink to excess, we drink to oblivion, we're drinking mostly to drown out feelings, not just to catch a slight buzz. And if I look back on my alcohol use, even when I was 16 in high school and partying, on the weekend with friends, I was always that one that got blackout, pass out, shit-faced drunk, while most of my friends, they would reach that state occasionally, but I was always the one being taken care of. And that 100% translated into my adult life as well. I was always the one that it would throw a party at my house, and I would be the one passing out at fucking 10 o'clock while all my friends kept partying until 2. So it was not, normal drinking was never a part of my life. So I don't know why that ridiculous mindset of I can just return to normal drinking was ever even there, because I never had a normal state of drinking per se. Looking at it now, though, in terms of how it's affected me, in terms of how I feel currently right now, it's a night and day difference. I have a desire to actually keep making content again. I have a desire to do my job and do my job well. I have a desire just to wake the fuck up in the morning and be happy with my life and where it's been or where it's going. I feel like I was just in this extremely hopeless state of, I even made a podcast on it, of feeling stuck. And that stuckness was 100% related to the fact that I was stuck in an addiction, in an active addiction, that I had to feed continually. And when you're physically dependent on alcohol, what ends up happening is like your entire life ends up revolving around your use. How am I going to get my next drink? Where am I going to get it? If you have to sneak it, how am I going to sneak it? You know, it's just this, it becomes your full-time job. Drinking literally becomes the only thing that you care about. And looking at that from, you know, a sober, objective perspective, that's a fun word to say. Objective perspective. Looking at it soberly, though, it's just like I was miserable because I wasn't doing anything. I was miserable because I wasn't happy. And I wasn't doing the things that make me happy, like being around friends or making content for you guys or anything that was fulfilling to me. Essentially, what happens with alcoholism is it'll hijack your brain. It literally will hijack the reward center and the like actual impulse control centers of your brain. So my impulses that I was acting on, the things that I was doing, were characterally not me, were morally things that I didn't agree with in some situations. And I wasn't happy with myself because I wasn't happy with myself. So a large part of recovering, working a program like this is working on yourself, working through your character defects, you know, working through all of your issues, working hard to become the best you can be, because that makes it a lot easier to not drink. If you have reasons to not drink, you have all those added layers of protection that show you, oh shit, maybe this was harming me. It just gives you a more healthy perspective on what your life could be. I had this delusion for a long time that I wasn't going to make it past 27. And realistically, if I look at it from, yet again, an objective perspective, I probably wouldn't have made it past 27. With the amount of drugs and alcohol that I was putting into my body, I was killing myself. And I kind of glorified that. I kind of glorified the state of, like, you know, all these rappers or fucking people, like famous celebrities that die at 27. Like, I think a part of my brain either knew it was going to or wanted to join the 27 Club. And that's really scary to me because, yes, in times of my life I've been suicidal and been extremely depressed, but never have I been actively trying to kill myself. I feel like that's what alcohol was slowly doing to me, though, was I was too much of a pussy to actually commit to, you know, hurting myself or killing myself. So I was doing it kind of casually with a substance like alcohol. And that's a very unhealthy view, and especially relation to substance. So it's honestly almost weird having you know, couple of, I have 49 days under my belt right now. So I have not quite a couple of months, but almost 2 months of sober Josh, sober thinking. And so many of my old routines and old, you know, habits were nothing but unhealthy. So if any of you are currently, you know, dealing with excessive consumption of substances, or maybe even alcoholism yourselves, it's possible to recover. Addiction is not something anyone should be ashamed of, because a lot of the times it's genetic. It's not even something you can control. I think I had the perspective for a long time that addiction was a moral choice, or was something, a character choice that person was making, and, you know, they're a bad person, just get sober. And then experiencing it, I kind of saw the actuality of this, which is it's not always our choice. Like, this is something that will take over your brain, that will control your brain, that will start making choices for you. So until you can't actually get the help that you need, and until you're actually willing to get that help that you need, which is really hard to step out of in an active addiction, you're not going to get it. And it's why you see people drink for 20, 30, 40, 50 years of their life. You hear people start drinking at 16. I hear it all the time in AA. And they stop at 50. And that's like 30 years, a 30-year bubble of their lives that's just essentially gone. Broken relationships, broken friendships, a lot of isolation, a lot of lack of progress in their life. And that's something I don't want. I created a really fucking awesome life for myself at like 22. I worked really hard, and you guys supported me to get me to where I am. And I felt like it was especially disrespectful to you that I was actively involving myself in this addiction so heavily that I wasn't giving back to the people who gave me what I had. So a big part of sobriety for me is you guys, and is the fact that I want to keep making content, be it weed content, be it motivational content, be it podcasts, whatever the fuck it is. I want to keep making content because I realize the actual like help that this can have. And I don't hear a lot of people actively talking. Like, you hear people go to rehab, but not really many people go into their experiences or why they did it because they're ashamed of it. My addiction is not something I'm ashamed of. I fully own it and accept it in the same way that my mental illness is not something I'm ashamed of. A lot of the things that caused those are what also caused me to step outside the box and do things like YouTube for a job. So I can't, hate on what makes me me. I can't hate on the chapter and the stories of my life. I'm not proud of them by any means because I harmed a lot of people. I hurt a lot of people, and I did a lot of things that I don't morally or characterly agree with, as I said earlier. But that doesn't mean that defines me for the rest of my life. I have a long life to live ahead of me if I don't imbibe myself with excess alcohol. And I want to live that shit. I want to keep being here and staying here to, help support you as you guys help support me. So talking openly about this is a really important step for me. And I know it's probably going to come off slightly rambly. I honestly haven't done a podcast in probably close to 2 months now. So I haven't actually sat down and talked to a camera in quite a fucking while. But it feels good to get a lot of this shit off my chest. And one main thing I kind of realized with my cannabis use and how it tied into my addiction was I started using cannabis medically. I used cannabis medically and then started justifying recreational use more and more and more. And I could especially justify it because it's my job. I smoke weed for a fucking living. So why not smoke all the weed? And what that kind of made me, and the point that it got me to, was realize that it's okay to use a substance daily. So when I go back to using cannabis, I more than likely won't be using it daily anymore. I'm still going to use it, but it's not going to be a daily thing. Because I was comfortable with using substances daily, which made me more comfortable to do things like drinking daily. And I would smoke weed from the second I woke up to the moment I went to bed. Towards the end of my consumption and towards the end of my addiction, I was smoking like 3 to 5 grams of concentrates a day. And when you're dabbing like that, like, you have to realize you are freebasing THC. Let's not beat around the bush here. Dabbing is freebasing concentrated cannabis. So especially for an adolescent brain, probably not the healthiest, just to be 1,000% honest. And once I was okay with using substances daily, it made, when drinking came into my life, it made drinking every day a lot easier. So I said that mostly to make the point that I did meet 3 subscribers in rehab. And from what I understand, most of them were there for the same reasons, alcohol and cannabis. All really cool dudes. Shout out to all y'all. Don't want to shout your names out just in case you want that privacy. But I know who you are. And it just kind of made me realize that a part of my excessive use, a part of my overconsumption on YouTube could have potentially had a negative effect on other people. It could have potentially pushed them down the same path that I was on. So one of the main reasons I want to start focusing on things that are more like positive recovery content and just shift the content a little bit is to show people that it's okay to use substances daily if you have to, but it's very easy for daily substance use to become excessive daily abuse of whatever substance it is. And like I stated earlier, like, the effects of marijuana comparatively to the effects of alcohol, I don't think if someone just smokes weed every day, they're going to be super in a bad place. For the most part. There's definitely some exceptions there. There's obviously the kids that sit around in their house all day smoking excessive weed and do nothing with their lives, which clearly isn't okay. But a lot of people can manage daily cannabis use and a normal job and a normal life. It's really fucking hard to manage daily alcohol use in a normal life and a normal relationship with people and your job and all this shit. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but the way that alcohol interacts with your body, the way that alcohol interacts with your brain, the way that alcohol just interacts with you physiologically is not conducive, in my opinion, to consistent progress, forward progress in life. And the other thing that I really think that cannabis kind of made me do or did to me was make me a little bit complacent. I wasn't constantly pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing like I normally do sober. I wasn't trying to make the most content. I wasn't trying to do the best thing. I was just okay getting by. I was okay if the bills were paid. That's all I need is a house and some food and some weed and some alcohol. And then it adds up and up and up and up and becomes overwhelming. So I think what's important to realize in people that aren't even addicts is that substance use can become excessive quickly. I used to say a lot in my educational content that you have to watch your substance use. You have to watch your cannabis intake and don't constantly be over consuming excessive amounts. The way that I see myself in the future using cannabis is at the end of a day, at the end of a long day, maybe a couple times a week, I'll take an edible or I'll smoke a joint or I'll hit a bowl. But I don't see myself ever, realistically, waking up and hitting the wake and bake, smoking at lunch, smoking in the afternoon, smoking before I go to bed. Because a lot of the things that I relied on cannabis for, I was almost dependent on cannabis as well. For sleep, for food, to make unenjoyable tasks, slightly more enjoyable, I guess. To play video games, to watch movies, no matter what it was, I was smoking weed before it. Because I had the idea that weed enhanced everything. And I'm not saying weed doesn't enhance everything, because weed does make a lot of things a lot more fucking fun. That being said, when you have to have a substance to enjoy whatever it is, there's an issue there. Period. Because you should be able to have the exact same sober fun as you have as high fun or drunk fun. And when those lines become blurred, it's dependency. It's all of a sudden you're reliant on substances to let you live your normal life. So that's what I'm trying to stray away from here and make sure everyone doesn't do, is become entirely dependent on a substance. It's far too easy for a substance to overtake and recreate the neural pathways in your brain, and all of a sudden you're addicted and reliant on it. So that's what addiction and the core of addiction is. 1 second. I'm gonna hit the jewel, even though it's not a jewel. It's just a shitty e-cig. I will say that though. One thing Rehab really pushed on us and taught us extremely well was how to chain smoke. We couldn't have caffeine, couldn't have sugar, but goddamn do they teach us how to chain smoke well. And I guess talking a little bit more about Rehab, I'm trying to think back to the questions I got when I was streaming last night. If you guys are not aware, I do have a twitch.tv/strain gaming, and I'm going to be trying to do a lot more content on there. Not only just to hang out with you guys, but also just because I owe y'all. So that's probably going to be a semi-daily thing, is me hopping on streams. But the schedule of a daily rehab. So it was it's not what most people think. I think a lot of people have this like movie view of rehab in their head, where it's like just a bunch of the most fucked up addicts you've ever fucking been around. No, they're all entirely normal fucking people. And the best part about rehab is you don't feel like a black sheep when you're around these people, because they're all, struggling with their active addictions and struggling with issues just like you are. And you can also say a lot of things to an addict or to an alcoholic when you are an alcoholic that a lot of other people just kind of turn their heads or scoff at. They're like, what the fuck, dude? You're super fucked up. If you say that to someone else who's suffering from addiction, they're like, oh yeah, I get that. So that's why programs like Alcoholics Anonymous work so well, is that you're sharing your story with other alcoholics that can relate and share, help back to you and hope back to you. But the daily rehab schedule was you got up about 6:30 to 6:45 every morning. And the first thing I did was meditation. So there was a 7:10 a.m. meditation. Maui, what? What are you thinking? And I hit that in the 28 days I was there 33 times. So there's also a 10 o'clock one. That's why I had some spillover. I didn't like somehow manifest new meditations. But I would hit the meditation in the morning. And then 7:45 we had breakfast, which was pretty fucking early for breakfast, but all the meals were wicked early. So 7:45 was breakfast. Then you had like a half hour to eat and half hour to smoke cigarettes. And at 9, we would start our first lecture of the day. So the lecturers were just different staff members, different counselors, different people who like owned the company. And they just kind of gave you not only an understanding of your addiction, but also some tips to work through recovery. And you just learned a lot about the disease of alcoholism and addiction. So those were really helpful. And then that was from 9 to 10. You half hour break. They give you half hour breaks for everything, just to chain smoke. But 10:30 would start our color group, is what it was called. And what that is basically a group counseling session. So everyone would sit down, and this was the most beneficial thing to me because I made like 8 lifelong friends in my group that you basically have to share your entire life story with. They do a thing at that specific program called the first step. And what their first step entails is just basically writing like a 12 to 25 page outline of your active addiction and of the things that, caused harm to other people or caused harm to yourself while you were constantly in addiction. So you share like some of the most intimate and deepest secrets and stories with these people kind of right off the bat. And they do the same to you and give you honest opinions, as well as there's a counselor in these sessions, so she'll give you her opinion and her professional opinion as well. So that was from 10:30 to 11:30, or maybe 10:30 to 12. No, it was 11:30, because 11:45 was lunch. So you'd eat lunch, and lunch was basically, like, all the food there was cafeteria style. Think of like a college dorm, and that's basically what it was. Maui, bub. Maui's knocking everything over today. He is just being a little stinker. What was I talking about? Okay, cafeteria style. It's pretty much just like your college dorm. You go in, you get a plate of food. Honestly, all the meals were pretty bomb too. Like, there was some people that complained about some of them. The eggs sucked because they were powdered eggs that you would get at like a continental breakfast at a hotel. But the food was not that bad, to be entirely honest with you guys. So you went to lunch, and then after lunch, it's the same cycles basically repeated. You go to another lecture, and you go to another color group. And after that color group, you hit dinner. So dinner was at 4:45, which is kind of weird because on the outside, when I've been out, I've 100% been eating dinner at 4:45, and I've been like actively starving the entire time. So I'm sure people that have to go back to actual normal life and like real jobs are going to be struck in with some weird hungry time hours. But after dinner, there was a film, and the films were ranging from, just like lectures from old past speakers to like 30 and 30 like sports updates of, active addicts that like played baseball or played NBA. So there was just a scope of educational film, even though most of them were from like the 40s, it seemed, like the 60s. Like, they were all super fucking old. After that, we had an in-house AA meeting, and then we had like an hour and a half of time we could just kind of hang out and have like recreation. So that was a full day of rehab. Alrighty, quick cut there, as Maui decided to step on my camera cable and unplug it from my desktop. So, props to that, Maui. But as I was saying, before I was so rudely interrupted, I think I was just talking about the schedule of rehab and the fact that a lot of what we did there was not what most people assume rehab to be. It's a lot of just like fellowship with other people, with other addicts, a lot of having time to spend in your own head because you don't have access to cell phones, you don't have access to anything. You don't even get outside books other than like the Milam book and an AA book, the big book. So all of the things that you're consuming and all of the people that you're around are dealing with your addiction. So what it kind of does for you and what it gives you is just time to work on yourself. And if you're actually there wanting to be in rehab, you're not forced to be in rehab. Because it seemed like a lot of the people who were forced to be there just didn't want to be there. They didn't have the desire to get fully sober. And there was a little bit of denial, a little bit of like people who weren't willing to surrender to their addiction or admit that they were powerless over a substance. Because there's a lot of pride in that. And it's actually the coolest thing about rehab, hands down, is watching people transform while you're there. Like, you see yourself transforming, and that's awesome. Don't get me any kind of wrong. But watching people that you're friends with, or watching people that you saw come in that change, and you can see them start to just like get better and better and better and happier. It's such a fucking awesome thing to see and witness. And I witnessed it in myself without a doubt. I walked in there and my picture when I was checked in, this is literally my face. I'm like actively pouting. I look super depressed. I look super angry. I don't look like I want to be in there at all. But by like day 10, after I was out of detox, I was walking through the hall constantly with a smile on my face, constantly having good conversation, constantly meeting new people that were awesome fucking people. And what rehab really gives you a scope of is the fact that anyone can be affected by this disease. Anyone and everyone. It's not something that like only affects, the people who are fucked up and mentally ill and ruined or have had terrible lives. Like, this reaches everywhere. There was a dude who came in a Bentley, and he owned like a huge, I don't even remember what it was. He owned a huge company in the state, and he gave this entire lecture on the fact that he had money always. He was always successful. His family always, provided very well for him. And through, I think a lot of his story was like opiates and coke and a lot of other, alcohol was in there towards the end, but he almost killed himself and ruined his life. So it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've experienced. This disease can reach everywhere. This disease can reach everyone. And you shouldn't feel bad if you can recognize yourself as an addict. If you can recognize yourself as an addict, that's the first step you need to actually break your addiction, to actually help heal yourself. So I especially want to make content like this to destigmatize that thought process that addicts are bad people. No, addicts sometimes do bad things, but it's not morally or characterly who that person is. If that person does not want to work through their addiction, if that person does not want sobriety, there could be a chance that is exactly who they are as a person. There is narcissistic traits. There's a lot of things that prevent people from healing themselves, prevent people from getting out of their addictions. Some people will die an addict. That's just a sad fact. I'm sure I'll know and see people that get sober and still end up dying an addict. But like I've said 1,000 times, the most important part is being able to recognize that this is something that exists. And society should not look down upon these people. When you get like a genuine scope and experience of mental health issues as well as addiction, you realize where a lot of crime comes from. And you realize that a lot of people that have fallen on hard times are just sick. They're not fucking terrible people. They're not garbage humans. They're not below you. They are literally just another suffering human that should be looked at with empathy, not with disgust, not with disdain. These people need help. Addicts need help. And sometimes it's, especially when you're actively using, it's hard to ask for help. It's hard to seek help because you don't think you need help. Denial and addiction go hand in hand a lot of the time because a lot of addiction has to do with our brains. And our brains and our thoughts are something we think we control, but we don't have complete control over our brains all the time. One of the things I learned from someone in AA actually a couple days ago was the fact that you're still going to have negative thoughts. You're still going to have, especially if you're a trauma survivor, you're going to have triggers. You're going to have things that upset you. You're going to have things that just kind of throw you off. And that's not something we should be ashamed of. That's not really something we should try to be changing. You just have to figure out new ways to deal with those thoughts. And that was something that was really important to me because I'm a trauma survivor myself. And I do have active triggers that make me anxious or depressed. And before, I would get those feelings and just wallow in them. Just accept them for what they are and wallow in them. And then when I was wallowing in them, I'd want to get that feeling away, so I'd just drink it away or smoke it away. I'd use a substance to kind of take that feeling away instead of taking time to process where this is coming from and process it healthily and then actually have an emotional or a reaction to it. And one thing they teach us at this center is it's called rational emotive therapy. What that basically means is in addiction, you go from an A to C thought process. And an A is a thought. C is your emotional reaction. A lot of addicts act purely based on emotion. You have a thought, you have an emotional reaction. A lot of times that emotional reaction will make you use. What RET teaches you to do is have a thought, process it through your beliefs. So you go from A to B and then to C. Once you've processed a thought through your beliefs, your unhealthy beliefs and your safe beliefs, then you have an emotional reaction. And what that does is prevent a lot of arguments, prevent a lot of negative communication issues in a lot of relationships. Because reacting purely based on emotion before you run it through a cognitive thought process is normally going to end pretty badly. Because reacting purely based on emotions, sometimes you're just not going to make the best decision. So routing your unhealthy beliefs and what can be changed, routing your safe beliefs through that thought, and then processing it as an emotional reaction are a very important tool that I'm very glad to have learned. It's kept me out of a lot of arguments even since I've been out of rehab. So it's just an overall way of thinking, shift of thinking, and I can say today I'm very glad to be 49 days sober. I haven't been 49 days sober since I was 17. And even in my periods of sobriety when I was white knuckling it and doing it on my own, I was still smoking a lot of fucking weed. Like, yes, I was technically sober from alcohol several times, but I wasn't sober from all substances. So I can't say I haven't had, I've probably had more weed cravings than anything, just because so much of my life was like, all right, I'm going to work out, then I'm going to smoke a bowl. I'm going to smoke a bowl, I'm going to eat some food. Like, so much of my routine was tied into my smoking that I've had quite a few weed cravings, haven't acted on. And I've had almost no alcohol cravings, which is good to hear. But I know they're going to come. I just know that I now have, reasons to not pick up that bottle. I have the knowledge and the understanding and also the support system behind me to make sure that I don't pick that fucking bottle up. So I think that's just about all I really have on this topic for today. I think I pretty much got all of my quick points out. I don't even know. I think I'm around 40 minutes on this episode. So it's definitely one of the shorter episodes, but it's a pretty basic episode. I just wanted to talk about where I've been. I wanted to talk about my overall rehab process and kind of if any of you are going through these same struggles and you're having these same thoughts and are apprehensive to try something like rehab and have the opportunity to, don't. Fucking get the fuck into that center and start getting your life on track. Not everyone has the opportunity to go to rehab. They're expensive, and most people don't have 30 days of their life to just not be living life. Most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So if you are an addict, are an alcoholic, anything like that, and have the chance to actually get yourself into a rehab, from the bottom of my heart, I beg you to do so. Because I think that if you really work the rehab and then work, a program afterwards of recovery, you can stay recovered. You can stay sober. And I hope you guys hold me accountable to it. I hope you guys, support me in my sobriety. And I'm excited to see what the next chapter of Strain Central is going to bring. A sober chapter of Strain Central for at least the next half a year before I go back to the occasional weed. But I know a lot of people are here because they like weed, they like cannabis. But I know there are at least some of you here that are here to support me and, like me for me. So the new content will be different, but it will be exciting. And I can say with absolute certainty that I'm really excited to actually get some creation done. So, alrighty, guys, I love every single one of you. I definitely hope you guys are all having a wonderful day, whatever day you're watching this. I hope your day is going well, your evening's going well, and I'm definitely sending out positive vibes to you all. Like I said earlier, I very much appreciate your support. You guys have been nothing but supportive, so yeah. Alright, guys, stay positive, stay medicated, and peace, friends!